Just today, two top Democrats called for Congressman John Conyers, Democrat from Michigan, to resign amid sexual harassment allegations. This comes as bipartisan legislation was just introduced that would end the use of taxpayer money to settle these misconduct claims against lawmakers. Joining me now, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, one of the co-sponsors of the legislation. Congresswoman Gabbard, before we get to your legislation, I do want to ask you, do you agree with Tim Ryan, Nancy Pelosi, and Paul Ryan that Congressman Conyers should step down?
Yes, absolutely. This kind of behavior of objectifying women and disrespecting them in such an incredible way is unacceptable. We should have a zero tolerance towards this kind of behavior, and he should resign.
How would your legislation stop the culture of sexual harassment and assault, and also of secrecy when it comes to the sexual harassment and assault problem on Capitol Hill?
Our bill goes directly to the heart of the problem that has allowed this to perpetuate for so long behind closed doors and, dark curtains. The fact that this process has allowed members of Congress and their staffers to settle claims for things like sexual harassment and assault using taxpayer dollars and without anyone knowing about it is absolutely ridiculous and unacceptable. Our bill not only changes this process for the future, making it so that members of Congress or staffers who have this predatory behavior, they will be held personally and financially responsible, but it also deals with the last 20 years and 278 or so claims that have been settled already in Congress, in bringing out how much those settlements were for, what they were for, and who was involved, whether it be a member of Congress or a staffer, while freeing survivors and victims of these incidents and giving them the opportunity to talk about this issue if they would like to do so.
Now, I'm not a lawyer. The idea sounds great to me, release these women from these non-disclosure agreements. But lawyers have said to me that there might be constitutional issues with it since it was a contract already agreed upon. I assume that this has been vetted by lawyers that say that there is a way to do this?
This legislation went through the Congressional Legislative Council that they helped to draft this. The bottom line is the American people did not sign on to this. The American people in Congress did not sign on and say, no, you've got to keep these things secret. And we certainly didn't agree to have the American people pay the bill for members of Congress who are either sexually harassing or assaulting staffers here in Congress. This has to be brought out to the light of day in order to begin to change this culture that is becoming all too prevalent within our society, where people should actually be living up to this standard of aloha, treating people with care, with kindness, with respect, not as objects that they can use and abuse as they wish.
Congresswoman, I want to turn to North Korea if we can. New images were released today showing a gleeful Kim Jong-un overseeing the missile launch on Tuesday. How concerned are you about whether we might be actually headed for war here?
Jake, this is something that I've been talking about for years, from the time that I ran for Congress and ever since I've been here, talking about how real this threat is, because this has been very real for the people of my home state of Hawaii, who have long known that North Korea's continued growing capabilities put us squarely within range of their intercontinental ballistic missiles. The fact that we are in this position today, where we have no good options left to us, really is a failure of past leadership, both Democrat and Republican. And so the only viable option that I see before us today is a diplomatic one, and that can only be pursued if two things happen. One is that we negotiate directly with North Korea and Kim Jong-un. And secondly, in order for those negotiations to be successful, we have to understand why Kim Jong-un is holding on so tightly to those nuclear weapons, because he sees them as his only deterrent from the U.S. coming in and trying to topple his regime. And he knows this because of our track record. He looks back to Iraq and how we overthrew Saddam because of false intelligence and weapons of mass destruction. He looks to Libya, and we see how even after Gaddafi was promised by the U.S. that if he gave up his nuclear weapons, we wouldn't go after him, then we went after him and took him out. He looks at what we are still doing in Syria and trying to overthrow the Syrian government of Assad, sees what's going on with Iran and how people in the administration and Congress are increasing this rhetoric to go after Iran and overthrow their government. So there's a long track record here that must end, not just, through words, but we actually have to end this regime change policy for North Korea to see that we're serious about peacefully negotiating to de-escalate and ultimately denuclearize the Korean Peninsula.
All right, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, thank you so much. Always good to see you.
Thanks, Jake.
We'll be right back. We got lots more to talk about with our panel. Stick around.